Welcome to Manchester Festival of Libraries. We are here for the Inspired by Libraries talk with Gary Younge, hosted by the wonderful John Rylands Library. I'm Rhys Williams, and I'm going to be the presenter for this conversation. So I'm going to start with the really probably awkward, cringy bit where I have to read out your bio, Gary. So this is the wonderful Gary Younge. He is an award-winning author, broadcaster, and a professor of sociology at the University of Manchester here in England. He's formerly a columnist at The Guardian, and he's an editorial board member of The Nation magazine and the Alfred Nobler Fellow for Type Media. He's written 5 books, 2 of which I've actually read, so really excited to be here. Another Day in the Death of America, a chronicle of 10 short lives. The Speech, which is the story behind Martin Luther King's dream. Who Are We and Should It Matter in the 21st Century? Stranger in a Strange Land, travels in the disunited States, and No Place Like Home, a Black Britain's journey through the Deep South. He's also written for the New York Review of Books, Granta, GQ, the Financial Times, and the New Statesman, and made several radio and television documentaries on subjects ranging from gay marriage to Brexit. So, quite a lot of things. been a busy guy over a many number of years.
So which of the books have you read?
I've read Another Day in the Death of America, and I also read Behind Martin Luther King's Dream.
Okay.
Which again was really interesting. Welcome to John Rylands.
Thank you.
And the Festival of Libraries. I'm going to start with a really easy open up type question. I mean, we spoke about this in our pre-briefing call a little bit, but why are libraries so important to you, and what are your first memories of using a library?
Libraries are really important to me because, first of all, what they've given me personally, that when I did an evening class that started when I was 13 in French, I would go to the library beforehand. I would do past papers from exams that you could get there, and I would just kind of, sometimes when taking a break, I would just kind of wander around, because the library was quite next to the FE college where I was doing the thing. I would just wander around, and it was this kind of, to me, quite a wondrous space of kind of, there's all this information here, there's all this stuff, I'm never going to get through it. It was like just this massive world of thoughts and writing, and that kind of just made me want to sort of wade in, sort of dive in. It's also, they're really important to me because they are public space.
Yeah.
And that is a very important thing to cherish. People can come into a library because they want to get a book. They can come into a library because they're cold. They can come into a library to read a paper if they can't afford a paper, or just that's where they want to read it. There are so many ways to access this place, and it's a public house of knowledge.
Yeah.
What is there not to kind of like about that? So they've always, at different times in my life, for different reasons, they've always been inspiring. I think, I don't have a clear memory of my very first experience of a library, but I'm pretty sure it would have been like most people's first experience of a library is your mum telling you to shut up, and you kind of, or be quiet, and you go, look, they've got one of the, they've got a book like my book.
Yep.
I mean, my mum was a big believer in libraries. I remember one of the first kind of somewhat political actions that I remember my family being involved in was my brother being at a sit-in in the local library because they were going to cut the hours on a Saturday, and my mum kind of endorsing that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, almost certainly being told to be quiet while I was kind of, in
the library.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something in that. So my first memories, so I grew up in a place called, the first 7-8 years of my life, grew up in a place called Cheltenham. And I remember once a month, that would be our walk. We'd walk to the library on a Saturday morning, we'd spend 2 or 3 hours there. And I think in many ways it was really refreshing for my mum, because she was studying at the time, so she'd be in one corner writing, reading and doing her essays, and we'd be in the other corner picking up books and going through them. And I was a little bit of a geek like that in terms of actually enjoying reading. I was one of the few people that when it was wet play, when it was raining and you're not allowed to go outside, I'd be like, yes, because secretly it means I can pick up Goosebumps or whatever I was reading at the time.
Right.
Yeah, so I can definitely echo that part, and definitely the be quiet in libraries, although I think that message has changed somewhat nowadays, and it's more of a safe space to make noise if you want to make noise.
Yeah. I mean, and also there were the kind of much smaller school libraries.
Yes.
You know, so the kind of this area of the school where there would be a bunch of books, and that you could get involved. But somehow I experienced that, certainly in primary school, as just being a place where there were books as opposed to a library. It wasn't until I got to secondary school and there was a specific building that I really kind of got a sense. And there I definitely got told off for talking and eating crisps.
Yeah, that's eating in the library. I think that's still frowned upon.
No, and I was going to say I get it now, but I got it then.
Yeah.
But you know, I was 12 and I wanted my crisps and I wanted my books.
That's right.
What's a boy to do?
That's it. Although I suspect mine would have been a patty or something more, something more with the library. But here we go. So, as you might know, as part of the Festival of Libraries, we're celebrating the 200th anniversary of The Guardian. So, could you tell me a little bit about how you got into journalism and that journey into becoming a really successful journalist?
So, I got into journalism because, first of all, I studied French and Russian, and I studied to be an interpreter and a translator. And what I realized in the process of doing that course was I didn't really want to do those jobs, but I really loved the discipline that those jobs gave you in terms of messing with language. What does this word do? What's the reader trying to do here? All that stuff. And in the meantime, I was very politically involved, and anti-apartheid. I was involved in the Labour Party at the time, campaigning against student loans. And we ran a rent strike at university. A guy came to cover it for the Scotsman, and he said, maybe you'd like to write something at some stage. Honestly, I was too arrogant at the time, and I was like, I want people to write about me. I don't want to be writing. I want to be making waves and kind of chat. But then I thought I'd give it a go, and it was really hard. It was really hard to do at the beginning, but but I enjoyed it. I got a check for like £40. It's the first thing I've really enjoyed that I got any money for. I got a bursary from the Scott Trust to study journalism. And then my big break came in South Africa in '94, where The Guardian was smart enough to realise that there were stories in apartheid South Africa that white journalists couldn't get. But they weren't smart enough to have employed enough black journalists to actually kind of get them out there. So so they knew that, so they were looking for somebody young, black and cheap, and I was the youngest, blackest, cheapest person in the building. So they sent me to see what I could get, and I was to follow around Mandela. And I didn't have a driving license. I couldn't drive. And South Africa is one of those places where you kind of have to drive or get lifts. So I would count lifts around from different people, and I got in with this film crew who had this wonderful access to do this authorized biography of Mandela. And through them, I got in with his bodyguards.
Wow.
And his bodyguards, I amused them. I made it my business to amuse them. And so they would let me ride around with them while they cased joints. They would kind of tell me where they were staying. They'd be like, hey, Gary, we're going to do this thing. Do you want to? So I was kind of staying where he was staying, where Mandela was staying. I'm sure a number of times he was like, who the hell is that guy? He keeps showing up like he's a stalker.
Like part of the entourage.
Yeah. And so I got this ringside seat in history, and I wrote this piece called The Black Knight, which came out on election day in South Africa, and I think that piece got me my job, basically. Wow. And then from there, I was in America for 12 years, and then came back in 2015, and then was back at The Guardian for another 4 years before I left.
Wow, so lots to unpick there, but I think what I'm kind of hearing in that conversation around the Mandela and kind of being in South Africa, a big part of that's relationship building, isn't it? A big part, and I guess an overlooked part of journalism is about people, isn't it? It's about people.
That's exactly right. That you kind of, you have to be, people have to be comfortable enough to share their stories with you.
Yeah.
To give you the time of day, to kind of even have you around, to kind of to entrust you. It's a lot of trust that they put in you. To say, yeah, I'll go on then. You can tell my story. And there was, I don't know what it was exactly, but there was something about me. They knew I was a journalist. I didn't lie.
Yeah.
But they thought, this guy's not going to run off and do some expose if we kind of get drunk one night, or if something gets messed up. Like a couple of times, kind of little things would get messed up. Kind of, there was something about the way I was with them that was enough for them to think, yeah, come along, this will be...
If somebody's going to tell our story, then I'd like it to be this guy.
Yeah, and that kind of, which is a great honour, but also kind of, what was it, Spider-Man? With great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
Like, it's also significant responsibility. But you're definitely right that the kind of, it is about relationships, and there's no one way of doing it. You see different people do it differently and very, very well. But in some way, you have to make a connection with people.
Yeah, absolutely. Really interesting. So we're thinking about libraries, and I guess Manchester's quite a proud city. We like to think that we've got the best libraries in the world here in Manchester. But what's it like for somebody that's been, obviously you mentioned you've lived in the United States for a while, you've spent time in Asia, you've spent time in Africa, you've spent time obviously in various places in Europe. What are the standout libraries outside of the UK for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. And I feel like, for me, standout libraries are a bit like standout meals.
Yep.
In that it's never just the meal alone, it's where you are as a person when you kind of, it's about you and the meal, you know, whatever, whatever's going on with you at the time. And so, outside of Britain, one of the most amazing libraries that I ever saw was when I left school, I went and worked in Sudan in a refugee school. And at that school, it was run by the UNHCR, and at the school, there was a library with donated books from around the world. And I was young, it was kind of my year in between school and university. I had time, and I would, it was through that library that I discovered feminism, through Sheila Rowbotham, as book Women, Resistance and Revolution. I read 39 Steps, Cry the Beloved Country. I was like this magpie, just wandering around this, and it was, it was a quite small, impoverished library of a refugee school. And that was one of the most wonderful. In the Soviet Union, which it was still the Soviet Union then, when I was doing my dissertation for my undergraduate, it was this kind of crazy library that was guarded by kind of soldiers.
Wow.
And
guardians of knowledge.
And you would. I was doing a thing on how Russia reported British news. That was my dissertation, and so I would ask for a magazine of a certain type, and there was this really convoluted system where you had to write it all down, and you gave it to someone, and they gave it to someone else, and then they crossed it off, and then it was put in a little thing, and then it was shot up a kind of, and it was, just a bloody piping was enough. It was kind of crazy. And that year, because I studied in Leningrad, but also in Paris, and I spent a lot of time in the Pompidou Centre, which has a big library section. And the Pompidou Centre, for those who haven't seen it, it's built so it's in what would usually be inside the building, it's outside, so all these pipes, and I mean it's just a kind of wondrous space in the middle of Les Halles in Paris. New York Public Library is amazing, kind of just so grand and kind of regal, really. But the thing is, pretty much anywhere I went in America, when I would go to kind of a small town, I would always go to the library.
Yeah.
Because libraries tell you something about a place. They tell you something about the health of a place. And they also, that's where you'll find the little notices saying, where if you're interested in, I don't know, fighting anti-Semitism, call me on this or whatever it is. And you're like, okay, that's interesting. I didn't, that's not in the paper. And you call the person up and it may be like 3 or 4 people going, and the person may be a crank, they may not. But like, it's not Starbucks where you have to buy a drink.
Yep.
It's a kind of place.
It's an exchange, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a public exchange, and the public is really important.
It is, and I think, like you say, that local history and those personal interests that you don't find out about unless you're in the library.
Yeah.
Or what I tend to find is I'll find myself in a particular section of a library and I'm picking up a book, and that person's interested in that book, and the conversation starts, and before you know it, you've made a friend, or you've at least seen what those interests are and what the gaps in knowledge that people are trying to bridge are.
Yeah, I mean, I want to make a special plug actually for Oakland Public Library.
Yeah, California, yeah.
Because one of my good friends works there, or worked maybe, but in the history room. And her job, people would come in and they would say, I'm trying to find out if my great-grandfather lived on this street, or whatever. And she would kind of help them through it. She was like a knowledge doctor.
Yeah.
You would go to her, or a therapist.
Human library,
you would kind of go and she wouldn't know the answer usually, but she would know where to look, and she would know where to look, and she would know how to look, and often when I was doing articles, I would kind of ask her, I'm doing this thing, what do you think would be the best? And she'd be like,
here's the process.
Start here and then kind of look on. And it was a beautiful thing to see, her at work. Yeah. Real public service.
Yeah. Definitely, I guess that's what the Festival of Libraries is all about. It's about the people who make it. And so we've got lots of other talks from librarians who are kind of, I guess, sharing the lesser known things about what comes with being a librarian, and I guess being, that real key figure, really, in people finding out information. And even if, like you said, they don't have the actual answer, they'll be able to tell you what the process will be for that.
So when I went to Sudan, I remember going and saying to them, I don't know, I've heard they speak Arabic, but there's so many, can you help me find out what kind of Arabic they speak? And they spent some time with me,
Brilliant. So, the next question I wanted to ask is, how much do you use archives or archive material for your creative inspiration?
Not much yet, because as a journalist, you were less working on kind of primary. Your primary sources were usually people talking.
Yeah.
And the archive, for example, for the book Another Day in the Death of America, would be death certificates, but they would be kind of quite recent. But having made the switch to academia, which unfortunately has been all the way through lockdown, so I haven't had the chance yet.
Yeah.
But the thing, and this was the thing for me in journalism, but in a different way, is what can I add to this?
Yeah.
And how do we know? So then you've got to go to the archives to just kind of make sure people didn't miss anything or didn't misinterpret anything, but also that you might be able to add something. I mean, you, me, John, who's behind the camera, we can all pick up a book and all see different things.
Yep.
And that's fine, but you got to pick up the book first.
Yeah.
So it's a plan of mine when the world starts turning again, to really kind of to really dive in.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next question, and I think hopefully this will be a really rich question. It's often been said that you write on behalf of the powerless, when you've won awards for your moral vision and integrity on the Obama campaign, which was really interesting. I happened to be in Washington, D.C. in the summer of 2008, which was really interesting. I was there for a poetry competition. I'm a writer and I'm a poet, which was crazy to walk around Washington and everybody's got an Obama T-shirt, and you're at the train station and somebody's selling Obama water. Just everything was Obama. Where does that kind of moral purpose come from? That sense of moral purpose. Where did that come from, and why is it so important for you to represent those who maybe don't have a voice or have power in that sense?
I mean, I think it's how I was brought up. You know, that I was raised by my mum, and the idea that I was raised with. I mean, we were a single parent family. There were three of us. We didn't have an awful lot of money, and so first of all, I want not my personal experience, but the experience of those who have lived similarly to be expressed. My family come from Barbados. My granny cut cane. And raised 6 kids on her own. My other granny raised 10 kids on her own.
Wow.
So
in the days before television.
Yeah, no Netflix. Just jump on the iPad. And so I think there are a lot of people in the world who either aren't counted or who don't count.
Yeah.
But they do count, and they're people. And so, and they have a voice. It's kind of, I see it as my job to kind of amplify it.
Yeah.
And to, give it kind of, to amplify it and to contextualize it. And, I mean, it charms in my politics, and that the politics of that isn't that I have to agree with them at all. It's not the politics of like, that they have to believe this or that, but that kind of, I think you're not a free person unless you're working towards a kind of general notion of liberation, that kind of, and that you can't be free by yourself, right? Yeah. You kind of have to, and so freedom to me is kind of closer to a verb.
It's an action.
Yeah, and so kind of, so then what do you want to do with this thing? You have this ability, you have this capacity, and this ability to do this thing. Well, what do you want to do with it? Whose experiences do you want to amplify, and who do you want to give the mic to?
Yeah.
So, and the way that I translate it in terms of an MO would be that kind of, say on the night when Obama was elected, I thought, well, I could go to Grant Park, everybody's there, but actually I'm not going to have anything to add. I'm not going to have much to add. I will have my own set of eyes, but there are so many eyes. So I went to a black bar on the south side of Chicago where African Americans live called the President's Lounge, and I spent the night with the people there, and I went the night before, found a guy, went to vote with him, an electrician who, started crying after he voted, big guy, and I'm genuinely much more interested in that. I find, even with Obama, when there was maybe a chance that could go on his plane, and I thought, I don't really want to do that, That the closer you are to power, the less you see. And my interest is in how people experience these moments, not how powerful people transmit them, And I guess, just walking up here, one of your colleagues said, it's really nice of you to do this thing. And I said, it's actually kind of really easy. I don't have to fake it because I am genuinely passionate about libraries. I really like them. And in a similar way, I am genuinely passionate and interested in what ordinary people think of what's going on in the world. So I don't have to fake it or kind of, it's not
work.
I guess I have to keep remembering that it's work, because otherwise you might enjoy it too much. But that when shiny things come instead, like, well, you could go and this play, or you could. It's like, I actually kind of. I actually want to kind of hang out with these guys. It's more interesting.
Yeah. It's that where the camera's often pointing, you miss the story. What's away from the lens, and what's behind, what's in the other direction, and can we find something, like you say, that I can genuinely add to the narrative?
Yeah, like sometimes if you just pan out a little bit, or hone in, not on the guy that it usually is a guy, but kind of, maybe it's just kind of over here, there's something just really telling, really revealing going on that kind of will explain more about the moment than the person you're looking at. I always thought with Obama, when Obama was doing his talks, particularly when he was doing his rallies, particularly the first time, that I kept trying to persuade one of the videographers, instead of putting the video on Obama, just put it on the crowd. And just keep it on like 2 or 3 people, because we know what Obama looks like, and we've seen him do a lot of speech, but it's actually his effect on the crowd, which is kind of, which is really amazing. I could never quite persuade him, but I kept trying.
There's definitely something in that. We're in John Rylands and we're surrounded by books. You've written 5, and I think that's something I was thinking about that as I was writing before, like 5 books. Like, where did the inspiration come from? Do you feel like being, like you said, so immersed in libraries and the importance of libraries, did that raise your aspirations in any way to kind of write books for yourself?
I did have to get over the idea that kind of people like me don't write books, and the first one was an agent's idea. From an article that I did about what it was like to be black and British in America. And then I kind of developed it into something else. And since then, my feeling is there are a lot of books in the world. So the world doesn't need you to write another book. It doesn't need anybody to write a book. But you may need to write a book because there's something that you want to say.
Absolutely.
Or there's voice that you want to amplify, or there's a light that you want to shine in somewhere. There's a story that intrigues you.
Moment of time you want to capture, for example.
And then kind of, have at it. So, it's been quite irregular. I think I didn't write a book for quite a long time, and then I wrote one in 2013 on a dream speech, and then 3 years later, another one came out. Now that's 5 years and I've written one, but so I kind of, it has to be something that is really kind of, it doesn't have to. There are people who just write books professionally, but that's not the type of writer you are. And with the last book, Another Day in the Death of America, which is about all the kids who were shot dead in one day, on a random day, there was something about kind of, none of their stories really made the news in any big way. Maybe one of them did. And, I felt like I was excavating. Someone had lost a child, even when they didn't talk to me. And I was going to not bring the child to life, obviously, because they'd passed. But I was going to provide a memory. Imagine your child gets shot and not even the local newspaper doesn't even mention their name.
Wow.
And, and that kind of, just for this one day, I was going to try and restore some sort of karmic balance to that and find out who these kids were. And that felt like a really important thing for me to do. Like, a couple of the families didn't speak to me, and I can't speak to like what and how it meant to them. But actually, it's important to own it and say, well, I did it. I felt that I really needed to do it. And
there's something in that, isn't there, that like you said, it's not about what you're contributing to the world. It's actually there's something inside of you
Yeah.
that pushes you to do that and to tell that story. And I think speaking to that book in particular, it really spoke to me. I've spent a lot of time. I've not lived in America, but I think pretty much every year for the past 10 years of my life I've been to America, and that normality of that, and that this is just how we exist. It's a given that we live, we die, we pay taxes, and people die at the hand of a gun. But that actually, if we were to strip those statistics away and just take one day and try to speak to those families or try to uncover the human behind these statistics, what could happen?
Yeah, but I mean, you write poetry, and it must be similar for, well, you know what? I'm not sure why I decided to talk for you.
Yeah, it's exactly that. People ask me about my process, and I say, and they look at me a bit weird when I say, probably think I'm speaking like a poet when I say my poems tend to write themselves. And by that I mean there's a thought of a theme or a particular story often that wrestles with me for a long enough time that I have to stop what I'm doing and sit down and start to articulate that in the form of a poem. And it's exactly that, you know, my best poems write themselves. They're not the ones where someone's commissioned me to go out and write a poem about this particular thing. I do that quite well. So anyone who wants to commission me, commission me. But no, no. But the poems I'm the fondest of and the ones that mean the most to me are the ones where something's gripped me long enough to actually do something about it.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, first of all, it's a blessing if you can make a living doing something like that you love. But secondly, it's a kind of it's a powerful thing to be. I remember halfway through writing the book about the kids, I said to my wife, I don't care if there was a bit more blaspheming in it than this, a bit more swearing. But I said, I don't care if nobody reads this book. I just need to write it. Like, it's, and you don't control how people are going to then consume your stuff anyway, so it's best not to worry. But that, of all the books I've written,
that's the one.
that was one I was most sort of driven to kind of,
to complete and to
and which interestingly makes you kind of, somewhat, you know, when it is out in the world and people, I don't know, some editor, a lot of American editors were like, oh, I feel like we know this story, and I don't, and I was like, oh, well then, you know, then you don't deserve the book, you know. I fire you even before you hired me.
I'm writing it anyway. It's written anyway, whether you're going to edit it or not edit it or publish it or not publish it.
I didn't write it for you.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, you touched on it briefly before, your new role at University of Manchester. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that role? Yeah,
I mean, it's, I'd be lying if I didn't say it's in the making, right? Because it starts a year into lockdown. I start a week after lockdown starts. So this is actually my first time in the city since the job started. I'm a professor of sociology. So this is what I can tell you. I'm a professor of sociology. I have spent the year doing some talks in different venues, different venues. They've all been in my daughter's bedroom, but like to different audiences. We've done through Code, which is a centre on dynamics of ethnicity. We've done we're doing a report on statues, memorialisation, and the effect of Black Lives Matter on statues, which has been really interesting.
Massive piece of work.
And we've been doing it kind of globally, so Britain, America, Belgium, Martinique, and South Africa. So that has been really interesting. And otherwise, I'm kind of cultivating, and I'm really at the beginning of this, work on Black Europe, post-war Black Europe. So this experience that we have of being Black and European, regardless of what Brexit says, as well as British, and the fact that we have if you accept that category of being black and European, that we have kin, across the continent, who are having sometimes very similar experiences, for better and for worse.
Yeah.
Sometimes very different experiences, once again, for better and for worse. And I feel that I want to know more about them, that there has been work done. There have been some people who have focused on it. There was a very good book in the last couple of years by Johnny Pitts called Afropean.
Yes.
There's a very good book about black European history. It was written by, I think, the only black professor of history in Britain, who's at Bristol. So there's been some work, and I want to, but not as much as there might be, and I want to contribute to it. And at the moment, I think I'm reading the work there is so that I can find out what I would contribute. But it's exciting.
I admire that, and I often thought, when I was doing my degree and I was kind of studying Stuart Hall, I kind of fell in love with the work of Stuart Hall, and I often would read his work and I'd make notes of, I wonder who's written about the black European experience. Obviously, he often talks about the Caribbean and the African-American diasporic experience in Britain, but I've always thought, who's writing on the European experience? And then maybe I should do some writing on that, and I think, let's not do that. I'll stick to writing poems and taking commissions for writing poems. So yeah. Well, having studied French and Russian and done A-level German, and then kind of taken this, because I got a fellowship to work at the Washington Post when I was 27. That's where I met the woman who'd be my wife. She's American. So my life took this very American turn. Yep.
And that's been a lovely turn. My kids were born there. That's where I've been. And now I'm back. I want to say do something else, because there's, no energy is ever lost. They're all related, but kind of, I just want to shift my gaze.
Yeah. Shifting the gaze. I think that idea of gaze is a big thing at the minute as well. And I think definitely within the arts context, and the European gaze and the white gaze and the black gaze, and where are we actually, where are we placing our attention?
Yeah.
Like I said, and you kind of touched on actually before, around getting over that idea that literature isn't for you, books are not written by people like you. What would you say to young people who feel like libraries are not for them? What would you say to kind of encourage them to interact with libraries?
Yeah, I think I would say that you've got to be interested in something. There's something that you're interested in, and there will be a place in a library where people have also been interested in that thing, and they will have studied it, and they would have worked on it, and they will know more about it than you ever could, and you will kind of, and when you find it, you will revel in it. So not every library is going to be for you, in the same way that not every book is for me, not every piece of music is for you. Yep. But you have interests. Yep. If it's soccer, if it's rap, if it's sex, if it's boxing, or if it's choral music, or bike riding, or hiking, whatever it is. People have put their minds to it, and why would you not want to know? Why would you not want to know? So the question is, and here's the other thing that you don't know, maybe if you think libraries aren't for you, that librarians actually, even more than teachers, who have to deal with like 30 people at a time and all of that, you go to a librarian and you say, I'm really interested in this. That's like a librarian's dream. Yeah. And they will help you. They will find, they're not gonna, they ain't trying to sell you nothing.
Yeah, they have nothing to sell.
They've got nothing to sell. It's a public space. Yeah. So they'll be like, how about this? How about that? When I went to the librarian at school, and she kind of did the work for me, because I was a little bit embarrassed. I was about 11 or 12 to kind of say, but it was like, oh, you want books about black people? Kind of. She didn't say that exactly, but she picked it up. and then she put me kind of, she nodded me in this direction and that direction, and it was, it was a cookie store. But I bet anybody who says, I'm not that interested, libraries aren't for me, I bet most of them have pored over a Guinness Book of Records or an encyclopedia or a map or
an autobiography of a famous football player or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, tell me that you're not interested in Tupac Shakur's life. I won't believe you. Or one of the Williams sisters, or Muhammad Ali, or James Brown, or name it. There'll be a place in a library, and the librarians, when you go and you say, I'm interested in this, you make their day.
Yeah.
You make their day, and they'll make yours.
Absolutely. So we're down to the last two questions now. Again, it's been...
Are they maths questions?
They're not maths questions.
Thank God. Thank God.
They're absolutely not maths questions. Incidentally, I left school with my C grade at GCSE, and I ran away like I'd stolen that thing. I was like, I'm taking it and I'm leaving before you tell me that you've given me the wrong results. So yeah. So it's just around. I guess libraries are really multi-generational in terms of the approach, and as you said, that they're for everyone. Would you say, and I know you've got a young family, would you say that the libraries plays a key part in your family life, and is it something you do together?
Not as much as it should, actually. It did when it was just my son. We used to have a regular thing in Chicago, and we'd go and swap books, and there was some kind of kids there. There was a kind of homework club, and he used to kind of enjoy it. Since we've been back in Britain, I live next to a wonderful C.L.R. James public library.
Man.
And I have taken my daughter there, but we haven't got into a routine, which is kind of what it needs to be, like your mum and every month. This is making me think that I really should. Otherwise, I'm being really greedy and just loving libraries for myself and not really passing on. Because a few times I've taken my daughter there, she has really enjoyed it, and she does like to read books. So I haven't incorporated it into my life in a way that I had at one stage, and in a way in which I should.
Okay, brilliant. And then the last bit is, I guess, like a takeaway phrase. What would you say the most exciting thing about libraries, if you had to summarize it in a sentence? Or
the most exciting thing about libraries is that they are public houses of knowledge, that we all own them, and they are kind of, in my experience, they are not just public houses of knowledge, as opposed to public houses which just sell beer and crisps. But they are public houses of knowledge where they genuinely welcome the inquiring and the inquisitive. Which, my fuel is curiosity. That's my fuel. It's like, why did that happen? How did that happen? Who can I find who can explain how that happened? And to have these sort of temples, even when they're not as grand as a Rylands, though, because this is a very kind of palatial setting, but sometimes they are kind of literally kind of porter cabins or
corners of a building.
Yeah, but that kind of they are. Their purpose is to encourage public learning. Doesn't get better than that.
Amazing. Gary, it's been absolutely wonderful speaking to you.
Really nice to speak
thanks
to you.
again. It's been a pleasure just to have you and to have these conversations as part of the Festival of Libraries. And again, just wanted to give a big shout out to John Rylands for hosting us, and for Manchester City of Literature for putting on the Festival of Libraries. And we hope you've enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you.